Hi, Chris.
Good morning, Stephanie. How are you? What's happening? How is life in Canada?
I'm getting really excited about our trip.
Tell me about your trip.
My daughter and I are going to Croatia and Greece on Sunday. We leave for 2 weeks. We are booked to get tattoos together in Croatia next week, and it's going to be amazing. She's never been on a plane before. She has when she was a baby, but she doesn't remember it. So this will be her first flight. Gonna drop her into a 10-hour flight. So we're excited. It's gonna be super
It's
fun.
gonna be great. Be like, yeah, this is exactly what every flight is like, honey. It's great.
Well, she's graduating this year, so she wants to travel when she's done. So this will be like a good sort of, hopefully we miss a flight and she gets to experience all of the things so she can navigate that when it happens. So yeah, super excited about that. We usually start this section of our very valuable podcast episodes with a dad joke. And I was thinking about it that it's actually really inappropriate for me to be telling dad jokes when you're not a dad. It's kind of like a faux pas.
Isn't it? If you have to think too hard about the dad joke, is it a good dad joke?
Yeah, it's a really good one then.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm pretty sad.
Mm.
Honey, you and I've talked about our love lives, our relationship, and things are
Oh, we
going
talk about
great
it
in
all the time. Yeah,
our
you're the first person
relationship
I
right now. And it's like, the problem is that, my significant other is a tennis player and love means nothing to her. Oh, it's a great one. Oh God, the groaners this morning are terrific. What are we talking about today, Stephanie?
Well, actually, this is really appropriate. It's a good segue from your joke. Who is really controlling your co-founder relationship? And I know that I don't want to set you off and make you upset, but we're going to talk about partnerships. And did you know that according to Noam Wasserman's Harvard Business School research in the Founders Dilemmas, 65% of high potential startups fail due to people problems, not market issues? I'm actually surprised it's not higher. Rand Fishkin discovered this at Moz's rigid board structure nearly destroyed his partnership with his co-founder. Their breakthrough came when they abandoned formal voting protocols for weekly transparency sessions that addressed real tensions behind their conflicts. Today on How to Founder, we're going to be talking about building governance frameworks that strengthen co-founder relationships. I'm your host, Stephanie Hayes, and with me today is my mediocre co-host, Chris Franks. And we have an amazing guest today. Travis Lee Howard is a 10 times founder and conscious leadership expert who created the MVP framework after founding 13 companies and discovering that rigid governance structures often create the very conflicts that they are designed to prevent. So welcome, Travis.
Thanks for
I am so
having
glad
me.
to have you here. It's going to be a good conversation.
Absolutely.
Travis, what did you think about our dad jokes?
I have a junior and a senior, 2 daughters, and so I like them both, but I laughed silently because I have been on the receiving end of the pain from those 2. So I'm almost off limits, but they'll be off to college soon, and then my son will be 13, and it's just he and I against mom, and it's going to be dad joke haven.
I love it. That's terrific.
It's really important that we have hierarchy in this show, and so we do need to know which joke you liked better.
Yes, I mean you paused me. You got me for a pause, and then I was just like, oh, that's bad. That's just that one kind of runs down your face there, doesn't it?
Okay, Travis, look, you have been a practicing lawyer. You are a partner in a law firm. You have started up 11 billion companies on your own. And I think what's really cool about you coming from the legal perspective, but also the leadership perspective, is that there's this really interesting conversation to be had around the nuances of partnership. And we have all been in various relationship with partnership inside of businesses. So let's dive in. Tell me a little bit about when you have experienced co-founder agreements, when do they become restrictive as opposed to protective?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's less circumstance externally, like the business or something happened. One of my favorite coaches, Julie Caldwell in Boulder, likes to say something happened, and that's where everything starts, right? Something happened, and then energy inside, outside, the rest. Something's always going to happen. So it's less about the something. I find them restrictive when they were built from a seat not of consciousness, right? Like in my world, every business problem is a self problem wearing a different costume, right? So I'm a 60% or 65%, that statistic. I would say that that's much, much higher when you actually dig into, the underlying onion,
It's
right?
usually 73%. Yeah.
At least and a half. Um, but yeah, for me, the most restrictive agreements happen when they were built from a place of externality, not a seat of consciousness or a seat of self. And that goes back to self-awareness. No agreement can save you in a partnership. And if I were restarting my original entrepreneurial law firm that was in 2006 in Denver, and I had a bunch of different partnership agreements, brand new partners coming in, I wouldn't even start with the agreement. I would
Mhm.
hand across a couple self-awareness exams and talk to each of the individuals. And there's not an agreement that's going to save you if you've got two self-aware individuals. The
So,
document can't
like,
save you.
pragmatically, what does that look like? Because like an agreement, if before you know each other that well, at least from a working perspective, I think I've seen a lot of founders and a lot of partners kind of go, well, we don't want to insult our relationship by, assuming that these bad things might happen. But from a pragmatic perspective, how do you find that balance between protection, which is probably really important, and um, fostering a good, strong working relationship built from self-awareness? Like, what does that look like when it actually becomes an agreement?
Well, for me, it's the starting with the presumption that all the bad things are going to happen, right? Like, and getting on a healthy perspective of um, all of these things are going to happen. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to breach integrity. I'm going to test trust. I'm going to have bad emotional days. I'm going to wake up selfish. Like these are the principles of that agreement starting and the provisions that are going to help you. If your perspective is all of the bad things will happen because I'm a human on earth, then when we're discussing building that provision for how will we find balance, how will we explore, what will be the process of this communication, the document takes on a different really a different structure, a different perspective completely from these things won't happen. Let's put in this most ironclad situation that nobody is attached to, and ultimately requires us to ask attorneys and judges to get involved to settle. Um, you can put something in. Obviously, we all know about mediation and arbitration as opposed to going straight to litigation. But I now, if I was writing an operating agreement with a new partner, I would have at least a once a month provision in there where you're doing some sort of founder team building, not necessarily like a meditation, but an open sharing protocol. And really defining the rules of the soft machine of the business you're going to build. And I think that's when an agreement stops focusing on the hard machine, the binary, the spreadsheets, the dollars, the voting structures, and it goes to the soft machine. What are our rules of communication? What is the cadence of that communication? What are our obligations in those meetings? Such as we will talk to people, not about people, right? And if that's in your
Right.
agreement, that becomes the first breathing culture of your partnership, of the company that you're founding.
I love that. Chris, I know you're emotionally fragile, and I don't want to like put you into a state where you're going to spend the rest of the day with your therapist, but I know that you've had some experiences with, partnerships and partnerships that may not have taken the path that you had hoped. So, what does this resonate with you? Like, what would you have done differently?
Oh my God, so many things. I mean, all the things I would have done differently. Here, so I think that one of the things that's a truism about entrepreneurs and founders, Travis, is that we are the people that are eternal optimists. We believe that everything's going to be great. We don't start a company thinking to ourselves, you know what, at some point in time, Stephanie's not going to be speaking to me. Like we don't, at some point in time, we cannot be in the same room together and have a conversation. We start with this idea that we're going to be awesome business partners and the business is going to be wildly successful. And it's just how we're wired as founders. The problem is what I like what you said, Travis, is that all things will happen. Like you're gonna be stressed out. You're gonna not like the person across the table from you. And we used to teach this at business school back in the day is that a marriage is easier to get out of than a business relationship. Marriages have lots of rules about how to split up stuff. Business relationships don't always have that. You need operating agreements, et cetera. So I like the approach, and also the whole idea of self-awareness. There's tons and tons of research now about how self-awareness really is the silver bullet for a lot of this conflict stuff within business and leadership. But I want to reframe the question, which is we need governance. We need an operating agreement. There are things legally that we need to do. We need to file the Secretary of State. But also you're saying there's a lot of this stuff that we typically jam into an operating agreement that maybe doesn't belong in legal structure, but belongs in more just an agreement that we have as founders. I mean, are you actually putting the stuff that we're signing in an operating agreement that we're meeting once a month and, talking
Yeah,
about?
and I don't have business clients anymore that I'm working with as an attorney, but I would say for myself, if I were drafting a new agreement, yes, I would actually put some of these provisions into the agreement. When you start that business, to go to your optimism point, the thing that's uniting you is either the idea of a fat bag of cash, right? Or accomplishing the goal that you're setting out for, changing the world, doing whatever. But even in that latter one, 9 times out of 10, you're still tying that to ego, right? Like you're getting something. If I accomplish this thing, yes, there might be some altruistic nature, but there's egoic pressure there. And so that component lends to you holding on to the idea, and now you have to defend, right? Because you had an idea at the beginning, and the ego is always determining that you are right in every situation, and you can use blame and anger and all these other circumstances to make yourself feel right. So when you focus an agreement on that end result and everything's built around the bag of cash or accomplishing that egoic goal, everything that comes up inside of that agreement, you now have to be defensive. That's the posture you have to take because you're the one that made the decision to sign the agreement, right? And so you've got like this double binding of I'm right. I just don't know. Try that in your marriage. Just every night in the kitchen, just put on the hat of I am only right, and see how long until you've got a fire.
He already does. He already does.
Oh God, that would not go very well in my life. I wouldn't, be on the front page of the Denver Post, Travis. Yeah, man
I'm
murder.
certain of it.
Yeah.
But we do this in marriage, right? We have the saying, I remember my mother-in-law, don't go to bed angry. What does that mean when you're brand new married? It means talk about the little things right now before they're the big things. So some of the avenues that I would be pushing into my own agreements would be if 2 or 3 people starting a partnership, and instead of it being 50-50 or a third each, start there and have a yearly process where based upon A, B, and C, and maybe it's staff, maybe it's if you had an investor that was going in, maybe it's just the 2 or the 3 of you in voting, but if you've built in a structure where, at the beginning, you're required to come back to the table, and every year or every quarter or 6 months, you're having to discuss, well, how's next year equity going to look? Who showed up wholly? Who performed? Who followed these agreements? And if one person is being open and vulnerable and, taking responsibility and accountability, and the other person is argumentative and blah, 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 and you've got, all the meeting recording tools in the world and AI at this point, it's pretty easy to get there. And I'm actually interested to see what that can spawn up in the future. But that's a practice. That's the equivalent of coming together every year to either focus on equity or focus on your voting structure or compensation agreements that are requiring you to have tough discussions on a regular basis. And to me, that's the equivalent of don't go to bed angry. Come together more often, say more, and say it from a deeper place inside. And you're still going to have all the things, right? Like there's no avoidance here, right? Like, give me an agreement that lets me avoid all the problems of life. Like, can't do it, So that's my take on it.
I'm kind of now in the place, Stephanie, where I just think everything should have an operating agreement. Like, I think friendships should have an operating agreement.
I actually
think
like there's parallel here, and this is something that comes up so often in all our conversations about all the different topics. The concept of founders having self-awareness and the concept of relationship in people still being always the source of the success as well as all of the challenges within business. And so the concept of starting from the beginning with almost like, I go into a marriage and we sign a prenup that says we will have good relationship hygiene and have monthly conversations with a marriage counselor, not because something's broken, but just because we want to make sure that we are, always keeping everything up on the table. In the same way, I wonder, like, have you ever seen startups or founders at the same time as putting together a partnership agreement, their commitment is that they also keep, good relationship hygiene, in the sense that maybe they have mandatory work together with a coach or with someone who keeps them talking. Like, that seems to me like a great investment for a partnership driven organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've done that in some of my most recent partnerships. I've 4 of those or 5 of those companies have had at least one of the same co-founders with me, who I've met across the table. He was the client of the opposite attorney, and we were trying to negotiate a potential acquisition that didn't work out. And not long after I fired my client, he fired his attorney, and we became friends and then business partners, and we've started a lot. And in our most recent business, and this is a prime example, we had a consulting company, and there was a third partner there who had been an equity holder in one of our other companies as an employee and came up that we really liked. And we said, look, guys, I'm between stuff. You have a full-time job, but you've got a lot of flexibility. And the third person is going to be doing this pretty much full-time. We have to be really cognizant, right? We're going to split this 3 ways, but it's going to get out of whack real quick, potentially, and we need to be talking about this. And 18 months in, and we had plenty of clients and things were going well, but I had other opportunity, and it ended up going how I thought it was. We had all those structures lined out, and every week we had a non-business meeting. We had 30 minutes on the phone where we talked about, the first thing we did was we went around, it happened to be 3 married guys. We went around and talked about our roles as a husband, what was going on. All of us had children. How we were feeling about, being a father. And then the third one was, how's your partnership going? Right? How's this working for you? And we had that phone call, and that was so that was the stage, and we had agreed to that because we had so much trust. I didn't put it in an actual document, but I probably should have or could have. Well, that 18 months later, when I raised my hand and said, this isn't giving me what I want, and I have an opportunity to go chase what I think is really in my heart, let's handle this like we agreed. And we went in, took the formula, went through the bank account, guys, I'm out, super simple exit. And, and then the door was open too. Hey, if that doesn't work out, like, come back, same deal, and it was one of the better breakups, that I've had in my life.
I have typically not been somebody who desires to be in partnership. for a lot of different reasons, probably because I've had too many experiences seeing it from afar. But this was the first year this year that I actually really leaned into it. And what I've learned is that one of the most important things for us to do is get really, really clear right at the beginning what's motivating us and what do we really want. And then what are we like? What where are we going to perform the best? And then this comes back to the self awareness, right? I know for myself, I don't like to work this way. And these are the kinds of things that I'm really good at. These are the things that'll drive me crazy. And my partner, she's just like, yeah, okay, I'm a good compliment here because of this thing. And then I also don't like this thing. So we were able to like build the business and our operating procedures from the perspective of who we are as individuals and human beings. Chris, like in your experience, and again, I'm trying to be gentle with you, in your experience and the partnerships that you've had, what would you do differently in terms of the beginning?
I think that the piece that we miss is the is understanding that a business relationship is a human relationship. And to your point, Travis, there is no such thing as showing up without the stress of what's going on in your life. And I'll give you a perfect example. I just drove and dropped off my first son for his second year of college. It's hard. It's hard to drop him off. I'm sad. I'm excited and sad. And but it's an emotional time. And then I show up at work and suddenly I'm snapping at somebody because it has nothing to do with work. It's just all about what's going on in my life. If I think that I probably had this idea that work was work and life was life. And I tried to keep those two things separated. Work-life balance, particularly for a founder, I don't think it exists in the way that it would traditionally exist within big businesses. I think that's true. But I want to ask practically, Travis. The other thing I probably would have had, Stephanie, is I would have had an outside party help. I would have had somebody from the beginning. And so not necessarily board governance, Travis. Maybe it is board governance, but since we're talking about this partnership and relationship to governance, yes, having a coach involved. We had no money when we started. We couldn't even afford, a coach in any of the businesses. We were bootstrapping. What would you recommend as far as having that arbiter? Is it a board member? Is it multiple board members? How do you bring in that neutral party that can help facilitate both the beginning and inevitably when there is conflict arise?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, financial constraints and the size and the scope of the business that you're trying to build is whether it's going to be on the board. I think the board is a good place to have it if you're, starting directly with 7 figures of capital and you're planning on doing all of your, series and going public at some point, But for the smaller, I just want to build this service business or this consulting business or this marketing agency, something smaller. It's going to be just a couple of people and you have a lot of cash. There's still a lot of advisors and coaches that want entrepreneurs to succeed. And there's a lot of coaches that have 30 years of experience as an entrepreneur or as a leader in a corporation, but are just starting out as a coach. And there are a lot of those people that would take very discounted rates to have some opportunity. They've got the wisdom, but they don't have necessarily the billing chops to go out and get all the clients that they want. So I think there's a range of advisors and coaches that, excuse me, that, based upon what kind of financial situation you're in or advisor shares or that sort of thing. But I'm with you. You having a coach that understands who you both are or 3 people, I would say, going back, I would start everybody with, Colby, Caliper, Enneagram, something along those lines that's like the foundational element. Okay, great. Now, what do we agree to do with this information? All right, we're going to have a monthly review with a coach and talk about any disagreements or anything that's coming up. If you're running on EOS and you've got your issues list that you're tracking everything that comes up during the week or the month. And how are we going to take these when I had a 7-person leadership team at my largest company, and it went through some crap. We we had some bad agreements to start with, different investors over the years. And we had just come out of, are we losing our company? Are we all going to get sued? Are we going to have to sue someone? What is going to happen here? And we made it out of there, but it was very stressful. And we kind of all came back together and was like, how are we going to avoid this in the future? And we put in that leadership structure where every leadership meeting, everybody had their Kolbe profile on the table. And as soon as, we also had a rule called man down, and it was the accountability. If you saw something, you had to say something. So the first time someone in the corner of the room crosses their arms and leans back, if I saw it, I have to raise my hand, right? And then whoever's talking stops, and I'm like, man down. I'm like, I saw the body language. You felt it. We need you to say it, right? And that became the rule. And someone who would say something, and immediately someone else at the table when we first started would be like, I didn't mean it. Whoa, 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 whoa. Can you get Jim's Kolbe real quick? Will you read the top one? Like, Jim just gave you like the most difficult thing he could give you, like his vulnerable truth. There was nothing about you in what he said. He just gave his truth. But let me read this. All of a sudden, that's that third party dynamic. Again, I don't have to defend because the document says Jim operates that way. I don't have to take it personal, right? And that's the key to unlocking everything. And I think the agreements that are traditionally written that are just these binary cages, I call them. They're not the skeleton, right? It's not the living, breathing agreement that we can come back in and we have to monitor and we have to add to and we have to follow communication protocols. But it's just that when you go to litigation, this is what happens and these are the facts you have to prove. That becomes the cage because you can allow it to hold everything. You have no responsibility. You don't have to be accountable, and you can get all the way up against that cage. And now you get to do the thing you've been doing your whole life, which is very comfortable, defend yourself. And that just, it's a cycle.
I think what this comes back to for me is that it's a big decision to go into partnership with someone, right? And I think that there are very few people I would decide to go into partnership with. And it's super important that you understand who you're getting into this relationship with. And if there is, to your point, a lot of like friction between two individuals, either that they don't see yet or that is already evident. I mean, is it the best option to try and go into that partnership where it's just going to be an ongoing struggle? Or is there a way to make that happen and to manage that, knowing that there are these two different Kolbe profiles or two different, Clifton Strengths profiles that are going to be constantly at odds?
Yeah, I do think that there's a space in the market for partnership matchmaking to some extent. I mean, I would not force it, right? I've been there. I'm sure you guys have, and I've certainly seen it if you haven't experienced it. Not everything is worth pursuing just because it's a great idea and it might make money. I think a lot of it comes down to, again, you mentioned, what is our expectation? Why are we starting this? And I think one of the pieces of my MVP program in self is identifying whether you are the gift or the gift giver. And there are ambidextrous people in the world, but at the end of the day, if you have to throw the dart or you have to throw the ball and hit the target to save your child, you're not throwing the ball with two hands. You pick one, your best dominant, and you give it everything you have. I am the gift, not egotistically. For a long time, I put myself in positions where I had to hold the role of the gift giver. This is, I make it, I build it, I construct it, I package it, and I give the thing that I'm required, that the business is saying I do, my role, the contract says I do. And when I give it to somebody else and I leave the room, they still have it. That's not me. I can do that. Law school taught me I can draft the documents. I can create content. And the first time I had a CFO, he came out of Rice, and he's like, "You're the first CEO I've worked in that can actually produce anything." And I was like, "And I hate doing it. I hate it." Right? Like, I need to be in a role where what I'm bringing to the table walks in the door with me. That's the role I play with my kids, with my wife, with my friends, with my parents. Like, that's the natural Travis 4-year-old. Like, showing up on the doorstep. I don't have to bring the gift to the birthday party. I showed up. That's what they wanted. Again, not conceited, just understanding. And there's no right or wrong or better. But if you've got two people like that are starting a company, and the goal of the company is to produce things that people buy, like there's going to be a lot of tension because neither one of you is going to want to do it. That's probably not the appropriate partnership. Or you need to figure out how you're going to handle that seat in your company and how the two of you are going to govern that individual. And do you need a third partner, or is that just going to be an employee? But I think the gift and gift giver is like the very first place to start identifying what your business needs and which seat you're going to sit in and how you're going to show up daily. And again, you can't answer that question without a good bit of self-awareness. And it's not just internal self-awareness. That's what I just gave you. I'm talking about how I know myself. But do you understand how everybody else perceives you, right? That external self-awareness is almost more important in the business setting. And that's where the coach comes in. Like, I know you felt like you were, very open to what they just said, but I watched you close your eyes 30 degrees and put your arms across your chest and lean back in your chair and purse your lips. It didn't feel that way. That sort of environment.
I love that. I haven't heard that concept of the gift versus the gift giver. I know that I'm a gift to this podcast, and Chris really appreciates it. I don't know
So
about Anthony,
much.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
So
No, I
much.
really like this because it's true. And I also think there's another sort of nuance there, which is like your perception of the value that you create. And if two people both perceive that they create value in the same way, then we're sort of at a loss because there's going to be this constant push and pull. And if I reflect on the couple of partnerships that I've gotten into this year, they started because we just really worked together well and we liked each other. And then we figured out what we were going to build, right? And there was this harmony. So it really sort of speaks to that foundation being super important before you even sign the documents. Chris, what do you think?
What you're just saying is backed by basically everything that we're now learning about the modern research, all the research, about modern leadership through the research, is we have this understanding now that to be a good leader, you have to show up with authenticity. Authenticity being the key word, easy thing to say, hard thing to do. But also we understand that particularly for founders, when you show up, you have this sense of not really understanding what your role is supposed to be and not really understanding how to be authentic. And so you kind of pretend. You start with this idea of like, oh, I want to, in our generation, Stephanie, everybody wanted to be Zuckerberg or wanted to be Steve Jobs, right? People were turtlenecks or things like that. And so I guess the only other question I would have, Travis, is how we're going to have that imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
It's natural. It's natural for us as founders. By definition, we're making this shit up, right? We don't know what we're doing. We're figuring this thing out as we go along.
Speak for yourself, honestly.
I know you have everything figured out, but it's easy to say, hey, we need you to show up with authenticity. We need you to show open, honest, and vulnerable. You need to sit in a room with your co-founders and your employees and be honest about where you are. But there's this incredible tension that's going to pull you away from that. Just like you were saying earlier, Travis, in the petri dish of stress and anxiety that is a early stage company.
Yeah, again, I think this goes to the soft machine that you design. So at the law firm, one of the things I did was modify our interview process. And so right now we have 5 or 6 people that would qualify for the culture committee. 3 of them at any given time are going to do the first round of interviews. That first round of interview is not going to talk about business or the job at all. It is 100% vibe check. And that for us starts with, I go through questions of, tell me about a photo of you in single digits. Who's there? Where were you? Why is that the photo that you remember? Now apologize to that kid, right? And if somebody can't be honest with something that they held dear but haven't completed, or did something in their life they wish they, if they can't answer that question without a little bit of emotion, they just don't qualify to come into our team because they're going to violate the rules of our soft machine. Now, there's nobody to interview the founders, because you're the ones that are doing it. But I do think writing down a story of at least 2 personas that control your life. Show some, like if I was going to bring on a brand new partner and I met them through whatever, and I had to go a quick speed dating round, I would ask them to write down their personas and name them. And this is one of the things some of my teachers taught me. It's one of mine that I would write is Mr. F it, I'll do it. When I get angry, when I start defending, I become, that's the persona that shows up. Forget, I'll do it. Resentment every time, doing his job, doing her job. Yep. But all the while being like, I'm right. I'm doing so good. And that persona is, again, they all go to feed the ego. How can I be right? If a founder can write down 2 of their honest personas, and then they could talk to you about when they showed up in their lives, where they came from, right? Like that was me when my parents were arguing before they got their divorce, and then shortly after the divorce. You guys can't figure it out. I'll do it. I'll handle, I'll do, I'll hold the emotion. I'll talk to somebody about how I feel. You guys are whatever. So that is a little bit of a clue that I've got at least a crack in the armor that I can see inside to the real me and what's going on in there. So maybe, go through that exercise with those original founders. And
I love that. All right. We are coming up on time. Are you emotionally ready for the speed round? I'll give you a moment to prepare if you need.
Let's see what happens.
Okay. No judgment. It's all safe. Okay, Travis. Quick answers. Don't think too hard about this. The questions are sometimes questionable, so please, it's okay if you're like, what in the world? Right. Okay. Equal equity split or performance-based allocation for co-founders?
Performance.
Okay. Unanimous decisions or designated final authority when deadlocked?
Designated final authority.
Okay. 4-year vesting or milestone-based equity release?
I'd always blend.
That's a good answer too. Monthly governance reviews or quarterly relationship audits?
Both.
Mediation clauses or direct confrontation protocols for conflicts?
Mediation as a second step.
Okay, awesome. Chris, what'd you take out of today's episode?
I took so much. I wrote down so many notes, just starting with the idea that 65% of companies, although we all agree it's probably more than that, fail primarily because of relationship problems, not because of business problems. And then, Travis, every partnership problem is a self problem. It's about what you bring to the table. I really do think this one is accurate. All things will happen. Startups are the perfect petri dish of stress and anxiety and relationships. It is all things. You're not always going to like the person that you show up as. You're going to do stuff sometimes that are maybe out of character. The people side of business can be put into an operating agreement. You can actually write that in. Board and outside parties, advisors, coaches can help find people that are just starting out, find people that want to help you along the way. Start with a foundational assessment like Anagram, Kolbe strengths, etc. I love the man down clause. If you see something, you have to say something. And start with the relationship operating agreement. It may not be a contract. Just start with that piece in any relationship. I like the gift and the gift giver. I like the idea of the 2 personas. Write those down. I like interviewing for vulnerability. Even when you're interviewing a co-founder, I think that would be important. And then this is my nerdy stuff. Everything I'm about to say is a skill. It's not a trait. You can invest in it and learn. Invest in your skills, external and internal self-awareness. Invest in EQ. It's twice as important. Some people say up to 90% more important than IQ. Growth mindset. And then really about that power of vulnerability, written by Dr. Brene Brown. Terrific, terrific stuff. But I think that a lot of the stuff you said is covered in there, Travis. Great conversation. Thank you for coming.
That might be the longest That might be the longest founder fundamentals
I
we've
take
had
a
yet.
lot of notes. I learned a lot today, Stephanie.
Okay, we've got a couple of deep dive resources to check out if you're interested in this topic. The Founder's Dilemmas by Noam Wasserman and Venture Deals by Brad Feld and Jason Mendelson. Okay, awesome conversation today. Travis, where can our guests learn more about you?
LinkedIn, Travis Lee Howard is probably the best and easiest. I'm in the middle of a website overhaul, but you can always get me, Travis at mindful.biz.
Awesome. Chris, you want to take us home?
Let's do it. We have episodes. Today is Thursday, right? Yeah, today's Thursday. We have some great stuff coming up next week. Stephanie, you're on vacation, so you're going to be stuck
I'm
with
gone
Anthony.
for 2 weeks. I'm
I
peacing
know.
out.
Wow, you're going to be stuck with Anthony and I for 2 whole weeks. I don't know. We're going to come back. It's going to be a dumpster fire. Hey, we really appreciate the people that tune in. You can always subscribe to us. Go to howtofounder.com. Follow us on Spotify, LinkedIn, on YouTube, any of those places. And really, genuinely, we believe in founders. We believe that you are the people that bring value to our society. And we're very, very grateful to be here with you along the road. Anthony says you're the pioneers of economic prosperity. I don't know. I always think of pioneers as people that wear funny hats. I don't really wear funny hats. But anyway, again, Travis, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.